You're listening to Thursday Lunch, the show about the mechanisms and magics for creating great brands. I'm Dan Howell.
And I'm Stephanie Robbins.
And last episode, we were talking about using the four C's, actually using the four C's. And we were starting with an internal view, like using them on ourselves, to understand ourselves, to be better at what we're doing. And now we're going to start looking to using it as a tool for externally, and that there's multiple layers of external. There's like the interpersonal between like you and I, like two people, but
Yep.
then there's like organizing a small group, your department or the people you're working with. Uh, and then that's one level up on terms of the number of constraints and balance you're trying to do. And then the next level up is maybe you're like cross-functionally, like if you're a department head and you're trying to, I'm in charge of all R&D and I'm negotiating with my marketing counterpart, or the like that's another level up of constraint and communication and consensus requirements. And then like you can look at it, use them to look at the organization overall. If I'm, looking at SpaceX or some, they're in the news currently.
And they definitely have that 50,000 foot view, right?
Yeah,
But I think in each of those, each person has several ways. You've got like let's say going back to department head, you've got how you use the four C's within your team,
right.
how you use it on specific projects, how
Yep,
you use it cross-functionally with your counterparts in other departments, and then how you use it in managing up with, your CEO, your board, whatever that may look like.
right,
And that by seeing those patterns and understanding how you replicate the process and how you morph the process based on the needs, because there isn't
yeah,
like a singular process.
right. And I mean, it's what we were, was saying a little earlier was, and at some level, of four C's is about making sure that you're understood and that you understand that everything is clear,
Yeah.
uh, and explicit. And
Yeah.
and there's a lot of things where uh, the implicit, the implied, uh, is missed or isn't shared. Like, oh, the only way I could think about this is this way, and but you, having you're different, and
Well,
you think about it differently, and when then we sit there and it's like, and it becomes like, one of those internet arguments is like, is the dress blue or is it gold? Is it,
right.
know?
Or like in the last episode, I shared the story of the boss who said I was just like her.
Right,
She had an expectation, she had an implicit belief that we saw things similarly.
right.
Right.
And as opposed to that landing and as a compliment, which is how it was probably intended, and also as a thing that was going to draw you in and connect you,
Right.
you were like, "No, we're not."
No, we're not.
Right,
She's a horrible person. That's
right.
right.
I don't want to be like you.
Right. But
And so,
then but then I think there's a good place to tell my production story.
yeah,
Um, so
yeah, tell the story, and then we can foreseize it.
yeah, exactly. So years ago, we were looking at, we worked for a company that made a quiche product, and keto was big, and we were looking at the concept of a crustless
Mhm.
quiche, right? We'd come out with some frittata products, but they hadn't done quite as well as we would have liked. So the concept was, oh, if everyone likes the quiche, could we make that crustless? And this came from a buyer, and it came from other places in the industry. And of course, our we had a lot of constraints in that. So, as the head of innovation, marketing and innovation, I went to go talk to Dave, our head of production, And he had been clear in a meeting earlier that this was not a project that he wanted to embrace. He had a lot of issues, very
Mhm.
real issues. The bake line was impacted. Um,
He
the
was, yeah, he
the
was great at being clear about what
right.
was he thought the truth was.
Right. He was that was one of the great things about working with him. He was very clear-minded, and it wasn't about him, it was about his truths, right? And that
Yeah,
was the truth. If we add to this bake line and the bake line is impacted, what is that going to mean for production?
right.
And so I went into his office and I had said to him, I I want to talk about this product and here's my interest. And I shared with him why I felt strategically it was important, how I
Mhm.
believed that if we're able to launch this successfully, it would probably grow our sales and cannibalize a little bit of the other production. So that could help. But also, I wanted him to know that I recognized that any changeover of platens in the production was going to slow down all of it.
Mhm.
And that
Right,
was probably his biggest concern is
right.
didn't want to add more allergens to the
The,
line, didn't want
the,
to change the platens on the line, wanted to just keep it running smooth. And so once I
I,
was able to tell him, I totally get this, I was able to really, we were talking about this, you and I, before we got on here, but the idea of active listening and repeating back
Mhm.
to something to somebody,
Yes,
something they've said, so they know you heard them. So once I
yeah,
was able to repeat that back to him, and now this in the world of Four Cs is communication, right? I was
right.
able to communicate, and communication, I've said it before, I'll say it a million more times. It doesn't just have to do with what you say, it has to do with it being properly
Yes.
received. And so I was able to communicate to him that he had communicated with me, that I understood him. And
Hmm.
now his
But,
defense on things was broken down and he was able to hear, or taken down, I should say. And he was
right.
able to hear me because I wasn't coming in and just saying, "Hey, I want this product, I want this product, I want this product." I was able to say, "Hey, I understand these are your constraints. These are the parameters." And then he and I had a great collaboration. He was able
Yep.
to outline, you got to get these things done. Definitely, Dan's going to need to do these things. If we can make this work this way, then we can see if it's viable. Like he was very clear,
Right. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And to me, because I'm walking into someone's office who has said, no, I don't want to do this.
Hmm.
And so, how do I make it not only so that we can find out if it's viable, because we don't even know if it's viable.
Right.
And that for me is the starting point. How can we even find out if it's viable?
Right.
But I can't have that conversation with him if he's not going to come to the table honestly, because everyone has ways to look like they're coming honestly, but then sabotaging it. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
We've talked about when consensus isn't just the word yes, but it's when everyone says yeah, it like actually means it, right?
Yeah. No, and that's I think, I hear that and it's like I hear you had constraints, you had goals for you wanted to do this. That's a constraint. It's a desire and it was driven by, other things, marketplace, etc. And Dave had completely different constraints because
Yes.
he's an operations guy, and we've talked about this, is they are incentivized to run efficiently. And so changeovers are bad and differences are bad for that. It doesn't align. And so then you were able to hear one another. And Dave was really great about actually listening and being active. Uh, you were able to hear one another.
Yeah,
Uh, and then you were able to develop a consensus, and that consensus was here's the things that we need to do
right.
in order for this to work.
To
Like,
even know if we can,
right.
right?
And then I do remember, like, I was not in that meeting, but I do
No.
remember afterwards, like, you came out and we had kind of a better roadmap
Yeah,
for what we needed to do,
yeah.
right? Which then we worked on, on
Yeah.
that piece of the map,
And in
right?
the world of magic for creating great brands, right?
Yeah.
Magic and mechanisms for creating great brands. I was able to have that very candid and curious conversation with
Yeah.
David in a way that didn't only not hurt our relationship, but actually strengthened our
Right.
relationship.
It built trust because it
It
was honest.
it built trust and thus balance between us.
Yes.
And and part of it is you and I were talking about uh the mindset of wanting to be needing to be right versus like there's the old saying, do you want to be right or do you want to be married? And
Yes.
it's the truth. Like neither one of us walked into the conversation with the idea of needing to be right. It was candid and curious. What can I learn? How can I grow? How can we get to where we want to get to so that we have better information, better communication to come to a conclusion? So as much as Dave didn't want to do it, he
Hmm.
also was willing to understand what is viable within the constraints that have been set up,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
he became a partner on that.
Right.
And we got pretty far.
Right. Well, and this is, I mean, to be fair to our listeners, this was several years into all of us working together.
Oh
We had
yeah.
built something that was already working, and this is just an example of
Yeah.
how it worked, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
actually think
now,
this was right before I left because I feel like that's why I never went anywhere with it.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
no, I did I did all those findings after you left.
Yeah.
And then I left myself.
Yeah.
So, uh, but that relationship, that trust, that balance was there, and this is just an example of that. But now let's look at, okay, now I want to build that, right? And in the last episode, I gave a little story of like I've been able to build pieces of our success elsewhere, um, with the right partners. And in a meeting, that I mentioned in the last episode, I was able to at least keep the meeting from continuing to be derailed by the lack of understanding, by explicitly pulling out the four C's and saying, "Hey, this is how I'm thinking about things," and being very clear.
And
Right.
I think fundamentally, both of these meetings, the one that I had with Dave and the one you had with this co-manufacturer,
Right.
are pretty much structured the same. Like that's the whole thing, right? Is that
What,
both of them you came, once you realized things were going off the rails, you came to them with, hey, let's outline your constraints. Let's get to a baseline of what we actually can do. And that was exactly what I was saying to Dave,
right. And
right?
here are the things that we need to address. Right. Dave
Right.
had these things as like, for this to work, we need to answer these questions.
Right.
Right. Um, and all of that's very like just that it's good business practice, but again, practice is what you do,
That's right.
right? Um, so
To get to mastery, right?
right,
Yeah.
right. So in order to create that practice, like let's start and look at like all right, then we use four C's to understand this meeting, right? But now I'm going into a new meeting.
Right.
Like, or I'm in a new organization.
Right.
Like, how do I use these four C's in order to be more successful? Um, and so if we start with constraint and an external look at constraint, um, where do we find constraints? How do we find constraints within the other, within those people that we're working with? Um, and one is like what you did. Ask.
Just ask. And I'm just sitting here thinking, gosh, talking about going to a new organization, what does that look like in a job interview? Like to go in and ask. I mean,
Yeah.
you should be anyway. I mean, as somebody who generally works with marketing and strategy, I'm usually asking, what is your biggest headache? What is the thing you're trying to, get to the most? But I think asking that constraint question, what is stopping you from getting there? And
or
this,
what are your goals? Not, I mean, constraints
yeah,
are anything, they're not just things that stop you.
no,
They're things that
exactly.
drive you. They're things that form
Right.
what way you go.
But
Uh,
I do always ask that, but
right,
I can't think. I mean, I know I've asked because I know I've asked it a million times. Like, so what's stopping you from getting there?
right.
Right.
And
That's a,
then,
because that's what I knew about Dave. I knew what was stopping us from moving forward because he didn't have the resources to change the platens, right?
yes.
You knew in your talk with the co-man that he had, I forget what his thing was, but he had,
They
you know,
there were resource constraints, and I did not see
right,
how they were going to get around these. And
right,
it was like, let's talk about that honestly, because you
right,
know, if we can't answer that question, then we really like we shouldn't waste each other's time. Right?
right. And
And they took that as me being, you know, gruff or overly, or they were put off by that,
oh
by
yeah,
my directness. Um, and so that's when I had to, kind of circle back, and it was it's something in Pete, I think of a Pete Matson story where uh, Pete Matson, who was founder of Matson and Company, great guy, amazing guy. He had this tremendous talent, and there was a client. We were consultants. And there was a client, and he needed a ride to the airport and asked for. It was a long time ago, so he asked for a cab. Um, uh, and Pete looked at the guy and said, oh yeah, don't take a cab. I'll give you a ride. It's not far. Okay. And the guy said, but Pete, I don't want to feel obliged. And Pete looked at him dead in the eye and said, yeah, but that's how we work around here. Right? Honest, just,
yep.
bull. And then the guy was like, oh, okay. And got in Pete's car and got a ride to the airport and felt obliged. Right? Because it was so clear.
It was very honest.
It was very honest, and
Yeah,
and you can get away with a lot of honesty if people think you're being honest. And that's what I had to do. I had to reset and get the people to understand. It's like, look, I'm just being honest. I'm not like I'm I would love to work with you. I just it's like this is how I interact.
yeah, yeah,
So, but yes, but let's say, yeah, we're going to the new, like we talked about in the last episode for constraint, like, the SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats is a great tool that lots of people are familiar with on constraint, right?
yeah.
Um, I think some other things that come to my mind, mission statements and policy handbooks and goals that people have is generally published knowledge, things you can directly see as like, oh, here's a constraint.
And so this
Now,
is where, we've talked a lot about how for you it's about constraints and for me it's about communication.
right,
Because I see those as communication, but you're right, it's communication of the constraints. Like a mission statement is a directive, right? This is
right,
why we do what we do. This
right.
is who we are in the world. And for me, that's the communication. But you're right, it's the communication of our
Of
guardrails.
Yeah, of the guardrails, and then also then you can look at those things, and you'll see or feel the dissonance or alignment, the integrity or lack thereof,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So um, definitely, yeah, I'm definitely much more constraint focused.
Well, and that's where
That's
things
who
like,
I am.
yeah, and that's where things like core values becomes very interesting too.
Right.
Do we live our values? Do we walk our values?
Mhm.
Um, looking at a company that where the culture gets misaligned, do all the executives see the company the same, what they do the same? Do all the people that report into them how do they how do they feel about or see how the
Right.
company is going? And the four C's framework can really work to realign all of that. Of course,
Right.
you have to ask. A lot of
Right.
executives don't ask.
But also, it's not like you can act, the four C's, used nicely, like as like, oh, I want to have this integrity. I want to enhance these things is, useful. But also like it's like if you look at the when there's a misalignment, when there's dissonance, like, okay, I'm buying a used car, right? And I do my research and I, look at the Carfax and so on, and the communication, I'm talking with the dealer or the other person, and they're telling me things that are clearly not true,
Yeah,
right? Like
I've had that.
factually, misaligned. Um, so then it's like, okay, now there's been communication, right? Now it's like, what do you do? How do you still maybe you still want the car, right? And but lies, it's like, how do you handle that? Like, you know, the four C's works there uh to understand like, oh, this person communicates, but the more I listen to them, the more I realize that they're about 10% true.
So if they're lying,
Well, maybe they're not, maybe are they lying? Like, is
if
it a purposeful,
I, yeah, I think
or
if
is it,
it's,
or are they misunderstood, or do they not know?
or
Right?
is it, if, if what you need aligns with your constraints,
Yeah.
then what they're saying may or may not even
Matt.
matter.
Yes.
Because it's really about, I need a car. Like the last time I bought a car, I was commuting at a very long commute, and this was, I don't know, almost 10 years ago. I needed, I needed a hybrid at the
Right.
time. I didn't want a fully electric car because my commute was too long for those batteries at the time. And I knew exactly what car I wanted. And I went to one dealer near me and we found everything. I had done my research. I knew what I wanted to pay. And then when I went in, we got it all agreed to, all the
Hmm.
pricing, everything. When I went to the guy who buys your trade-in, he pulled out the Carfax and there was there was one typo in one of the mileages. There's like 8 entries,
Yeah.
and one of them was off. So, and it was towards the middle. So you could see the alignment. Well, he came to me and said, well, there's fraud in your Carfax. So I can only give you this much money, about half of what I knew my car was worth, because
Uh-huh.
I'm going to have to sell it for parts now. So there were a few things in there to unpack. First of all, constraint wise, I knew what my car was worth, and that was important to me. I'm not going to work with a dealer who's not ethical and not going to work with me
Right.
openly. And the second one is, no, car dealers don't sell it for parts. Everything is bundled and sold into bundles. And he was a big fat liar, like
Right.
honestly. And so after 3 hours, I got in my old car and I drove to another dealer who did exactly what I wanted. I had texted him first and he confirmed he would. Did exactly what I wanted because I had done my research and knew that what I was asking
Hmm.
was not was very reasonable. I actually could have probably negotiated better or more, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get this done.
Right.
I knew what was reasonable, So but my constraint, and I was clear at communicating it because I had actually texted him before I got there. Here's the car, here's the condition, here's what I expect, here's what I want to buy, here's what I want to pay.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, so it's interesting to think about that in the framework of the four C's because he, the first sales guy had we talked about consensus before when you don't really have consensus. He had the illusion of consensus, but he really didn't because he wasn't being honest and communicating honestly and collaborating honestly
Right.
for what we had actually agreed to before I even walked in the door.
Right. And that, that car dealer, that car sale relationship is generally kind of a one-off. It's
Yeah,
not like
yeah,
at work, like your integrity really, really matters.
yeah. Oh, they're
Right.
gone now, by the way.
Right. You know, but in that, so but the four C's can still be useful, like in recognizing that. Like,
Yeah.
what is the constraint of this deal? Like, is this the thing that that you're never going to see one another again? So if one of you is lying or fraudulent, it's less likely to be an issue? Or is this thing like, you know, like I can't behave that way with my wife. Like I see her the next day. I see her every day.
But I think, obviously I'm biased because I think the four C's is just such a great, we developed the four C's as a description for how we got to the
Yes.
successes. But it's so brilliant to me because even as this sales guy I might only be a one-time customer. Well, first of all, no one is a one-time customer.
Yeah.
Even if they don't come back, they tell people, right? You
Yeah.
tell people. But regardless of whether there's going to be a long-term relationship or not, it's such a clear and honest way to get to a conclusion. In sales, you're problem solving. And so it's
Right.
such a clear and honest way, just as in any kind of project, to get to where you need to go. And it reminds me back to that conversation with Dave,
Hmm.
where when I walked in the door, we were not on the same side of this. And
Right.
so, what did it take to change that? And that
Mhm.
was to come at it with honesty and clarity. Come at it with that communication, with
Hmm.
respect, and
Right.
it translates well into this sales situation with the car because if he had actually been able to lead things in a way of using, if he had used the four C's to that, he could have
Right.
closed. First of all, he could have closed that deal. The secondly is he kept me there for 3 hours, which he
Yes.
didn't need to do. He could have closed it in 20 minutes. I was in and out of the other place in a half hour.
Right.
That was it.
Hmm.
It was done before I walked in the door. Um, and that to me is very interesting. I think,
He
without
could have.
going into a psychology, I don't know. I mean, I think his tactic is to wear people down, but he
Right.
had a product that didn't need that. He
Right.
had, I've been in sales and because I sold quality things, I didn't wear people down. I didn't lie to them. I didn't misrepresent anything because
No.
I was able to, ironically, not knowing the four C's yet, but use that four C's process. I would always ask, what do you need? What's the functionality you need? What's the design you need?
Hmm.
And be able to understand exactly what their constraints were and
Right.
relay it back to them so that they knew I was listening. And then when I showed them what their options were, now they knew my goal was to solve the problem. And if they asked about more expensive things, I'd be honest. Yeah, I think that's better. I think you'd be happier with it. Or no, why spend money where you don't need to? I can't tell you how many times I told a customer, I don't think you need that. Why spend money where you don't need to? Here's what you
Right.
told me you wanted. And while it does that, this one does it better and it's a lower cost. So why
Right.
not? And that, of course, builds the trust too, because again, I was working from that unconsciously at the time, 4C's framework
Hmm.
of building collaboration and consensus rather than needing to win, so to speak.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
had a
And
really high closing rate, by the way.
that's, yeah. I can only sell things that I truly understand and believe in. That's it. Otherwise, it's just
Absolutely.
like,
Oh yeah, I
yeah.
agree with that completely. Absolutely. There, I had what I was working with. I had many brands that I loved, and many
Mm.
brands that I would not even bring with me because I didn't believe
So
in them.
what
And
are,
that's part of all that, I think, though. That's part of that. That's the balance we talk about,
hmm
which builds trust, and all of that is a byproduct of working through the four C's framework.
yes, absolutely.
See, I said this last time, I get these moments that like blow my mind. And that's what that was like, oh, okay.
Yes. And I agree. And it's one of those things where it's like, hey, this is just like maybe it's this when we started, and now it's like, maybe a lot of things are this, right? This really can work. And a lot of the other things that we read and see, we both have read the book, Never Split the Difference. Uh, we, and I always mention these books and then forget the name of the author.
Chris Voss. Well, this one is
Chris
Chris
Voss. Yeah,
Voss, and he is a co-author, but I don't know their name. I
right,
just know Chris Voss because he was in two documentaries I just watched,
right.
and
But
that
he was
was
the FBI
fascinating.
negotiator, right? He was a hostage negotiator, and he talks about his whole thing is about, it's all about learning and understanding more about the other person is how you negotiate,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You have to, everything you're saying, everything you're doing, you're mirroring to tell them, I understand you. I build this trust. I build an understanding, and that you're looking to understand and find out what it is that they really need. Like,
right,
how do we get there?
right.
Um, and so it's a good book, but it's also very, it fits, it fits well within the four C's construct in terms of understanding.
Absolutely. Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when you're, it's called never split the difference because you're a hostage negotiator. You can't split,
right.
you
Well,
know.
it kill two people, we'll take the other two, we're good. Right.
Yeah. So this is to me, this is a great exploration into how we go from internal to external. So I don't
Right.
know, what are your takeaways for the
But
day?
I was going to say there's a little like on communication, like there's lots of different approaches to communication, but all of them are about, clearly um, stating things. And we've mentioned the candid and curious of
Oh, conversational
conversational
capacity.
capacity,
Hmm.
which very simple construct. It's like ask questions and be honest.
Right. Right.
But there's a whole book on ask questions and be honest. On consensus, like how do you understand consensus? How do you know consensus in a situation? Things that we've done, like
Hmm.
you're the in the past is like we talked about episodes ago, the poor man's PLM. Like
Yeah.
we had a consensus document. We had, this is what we've done, this is what we're doing, and this is what needs to get done. It was all on one thing, right? Um, and then on collaboration, the consensus and the collaboration, like collaboration, at least for you and I think is such a default state that I don't know. I've never had to figure that out explicitly. Um, but if any of our listeners know of specifically things that talk about, how to create collaboration, how to get people to do the things they're supposed to do, um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
share it with us. But yeah, using that, using internal, create the balance, external, looking at using it as that tool, um,
Yeah.
I think is uh, kind of the point of this episode. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think for me, it's a continuation, kind of what I said in the last episode, but it's a continuation of seeing the four C's as the framework that creates that ecosystem
Yes.
with balance and trust and
Wait,
confidence. And so you see the patterns internally, all of
right.
that, the four C's, the same ecosystem of balance and trust and confidence, and then
Mhm.
externally, and
Right.
then using that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a diagnostic tool on that balance and on that trust. It's like,
Yeah.
do I have balance and trust? Like
Yeah.
you don't you want that in all your relationships, but you're not always going to have it. And then if you don't have it, then you need to build it, right? And the
Right.
four C's, if you're thinking that way, I believe helps you recognize it, helps you build it, and helps you have it.
Yeah. And
Now,
it's an ecosystem.
yes,
Right. So it's sort of when you think, I'm picturing again those fractals, and you think of that
yeah,
sort of center area as the four C's, and then and then it builds into the whole ecosystem that gets created from it.
Right. And how you can have the four C's in anything, and depending on what the settings are on what the balance is, what the important things are, who has more power, et cetera, in the org, uh, what are the what are the rules, what are the laws, what are the all these things. Like, you're going to get these different patterns out of the same thing,
Right.
right?
Right. And when we started on this journey, we knew we had identified the four C's. We knew the four C's was
Or important.
important. It was the tool, it was the structure that we had created for that success. And then we saw where we were and we're not able to replicate that. But it
Yes.
it it just keeps expanding again, like those fractals.
Right.
And that just blows my mind every time we talk. Like I said it last time too, for people listening, we are discovering this with you.
Yeah. You're discovering it with us.
You're discovering
And
it with us. This is all for us. Our goal for the podcast was for us to really understand and unpack the four C's framework and what it means so that we
we could
can
be better.
we want to be better. We want to make more with it. Um, and so, reach out to us, talk to us.
Yes.
We have a few people who talk to us more regularly, and we love it. And we'd love to hear from all of you.
Yeah. No, I share your takeaway. It was like, hey, this thing, yeah, maybe it's this. Maybe this is a good way to look at these things. And
Yeah.
as the more we've used it, the more uh, useful it has been to understand, um, and also use as a tool to help clarify when I was misunderstood. So I think that is all I have today. How
Yeah.
about you? Like,
Yeah, I think so. I
great.
think I think that really I think this was really a fun exploration. I love it in conjunction with last week
Hmm.
or last episode. It's not weekly. Um, yeah, and just it always, like I said, it always blows my mind the ecosystem that we create. And with
Yes.
that, you're listening to Thursday Lunch, the show about the mechanisms and magic for creating great brands. I'm Stephanie Robbins.
And I'm Dan Howell. If you like this episode, please tell a friend, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
And we would love for you to join the conversation, as I've already said. Email us at joinus@thursdaylunch.net. And you can find past episodes and more information about us and the four C's at thursdaylunch.net or on our LinkedIn page, Thursday Lunch.
And of course, you can find Thursday Lunch on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Amazon Music and anywhere else you find podcasts. This episode was produced by Stephanie Robbins and me, Dan Howell, with special thanks to Jen Howell for her amazing support. All stories are true as remembered and affirmed by me and Stephanie. Copyright 2026, all rights reserved.